We are so thrilled to be partnering with Hinge. Hinge is the dating app designed to be deleted. As you all know, I'm a huge Hinge advocate as I met my partner of almost 3 years on the app. Even before meeting him, Hinge was always my go-to app because I met more relationship-minded people here and had some great dates. Clearly, I haven't been on the app for a little while, but I re-downloaded it to check out some of the new features. One that stood out to me was the voice prompt, my best friend's take on why you should date me, where your friend can hype you up. Not only does this make the profile creation less daunting, but it's not always easy to see your own green flags. So to test it out, I asked Yue some fun prompts to get her take on what I could put if I was dating again. So the first one, how long have we known each other? What was your first impression of me and how has that changed?
Julie and I have known each other for almost 10 years. My first impression of Julie was that she's very social, but I've learned that she has a lot more depth to her beyond the social butterfly that she is.
My next prompt, what do you think are my green flags?
I would say she's deeply loyal. She believes in love, curious mindset, and she is fearlessly ambitious.
And then last but not least, what kind of friend am I?
Julie is the kind of friend who will always have your back, no matter what.
Damn, that feels nice to hear. So download Hinge and try voice prompts today. Then find someone worth deleting the app for. I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine.
The Dateable podcast is an insider's look into modern dating that the Huffington Post calls one of the top 10 podcasts about love and sex. On each episode, we'll talk to real daters about everything from sex parties to sex droughts, date fails to diaper fetishes, and first moves to first loves. I'm your host, Yue Xu, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear from my co-host and producer, Julie Krafchick, as we explore this crazy dateable world. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating where we dig into the whys of why people do the things that they do. And a lot of times it's just getting to the root of people's motivation, right? Like instead of us trying to read each other's mind, we actually ask the question, why? Why are you doing this? Why do you think this way? And that's how we get our answers. This week has been an emotional roller coaster for me, Julie. I think this news about Chadwick Boseman has hit hard just because I think a lot of it is, one, I had no idea that he was battling cancer. I don't think many people did. But he was also diagnosed when he was my age, 39. I just can't believe he appeared so healthy. He appeared so lively, that he was battling something so dark that nobody knew about.
It's just, you just don't ever know what anyone is going through, which I think has been the other big moral of this whole podcast too, right? It's like beyond just the why, it's like you have to have a little forgiveness for people too, because you just don't ever know someone's situation.
It breaks my heart that his wife was by his side when this happened, and made me think about, at the beginning of relationships and dating, all the games people play and all the like, oh, did he text me back? And why does she do this? end of the day, none of these things
Nothing
matter.
matters. Exactly. Like if you're the first person or you're whatever, like who cares?
Who cares?
I think I've been a bit more active on dating apps this week, which has been good. I think a couple of weeks ago I said I was ready to start to try to meet people again. And I actually have had the most luck on Tinder. I haven't activated Tinder in years, but I was like, you might as well see what's out there, right? And I've actually had some like pretty solid convos with people on Tinder. But the reason I'm bringing this up is one of those convos I felt like really good about. Like we kept going back and forth. Like it got to the point that I was like, okay, I'm like getting distracted from work. Like I need to like cut this and continue it another day. Like we were just going back and forth. So I gave him I was like, oh, if you want to like reach out via text, like here's my number, like try to like move it along outside of the app. So he like texted me immediately and just so I had his number and all that. And then I think this was like Tuesday and I hadn't really heard anything from him since. So I'm like, you know what? Like, fuck it. I'm just going to like send him a message, see how his weekend's been or whatever. And then no reply, which, it's one of those things. The reason I bring it up is because I know a lot of people on our Facebook group have things like this happen all the time. Like we see it all the time. This is part of modern dating. At the end of the day, it's how do you process it? How does it affect your mindset? And why I'm bringing it up too is I have no idea what's going on in this person's life. I talked to him for what? A couple hours, if even, it's like it wasn't even a couple hours. It was maybe like an hour max, right? It's like, you just don't know. And I can choose to take it offensively or I can choose to move on. Like in reality, this guy knows nothing about me either. And I don't regret reaching out because it's like one of those things that it's like, I'm not going to keep doing it now, right? It's like you did it once, didn't get the response you wanted. Now it's time to move on to someone that shares that response.
Yeah, you have to understand that it takes two to tango. And if you're trying to force someone else to dance with you, it'll never work out. So instead of dwelling on the why me mentality, the victim mentality, you have to say, like, if I'm stepping forward and the other person doesn't take a step forward to meet me, then I have the choice to leave this dance.
Exactly.
I don't need to be part of this.
Exactly. But it's also good to step forward. I think a lot of people don't step forward. And a lot of it's like, oh, the man should do that. Or, I don't want to come off too overeager, whatever like that is. And I think at the end of the day, like tying it back to what you were saying, none of this shit matters. Like it doesn't matter who messages first. As long as you're getting that reciprocity, I think that does matter. If you're not getting that back and you're always the one initiating and you're always the one doing that, that is a different story than not being so tit for tat on who makes the first move.
It's kind of similar to our episode last week with the TikTok couple. And we had that conversation on our Facebook group where people really admired these two for both taking a step forward, one step at a time, but also meeting each other where the other person wants them to be. And I think that takes a lot of courage these days, because it's that, like you always talk about the relationship chicken, is everyone's so afraid to take that step forward. And therefore you get to a standstill. And what do you do at that point? You can't move forward. And I also experienced this in my own relationship. Even though I am in a committed monogamous relationship, there's still that hesitancy to step forward for your partner, to show up for your partner, because you don't want to get your feelings hurt. There's pride that stands in the way. And in the last week that my boyfriend and I went away to celebrate our 2-year anniversary, it became like couples retreat for us because we had to talk about some of the ways that we weren't showing up for each other. And it became so clear to me that my pride standing in the way of giving him all of me is also stopping him from committing farther to me, So it's a vicious cycle that we have to break out of. And I learned so much from this past week of just having the courage to go and step forward and to give it all you've got.
I think that's so important that you say that for a couple of reasons. And I want to hear all about the anniversary. I've been waiting to not ask you until we talked. But before I ask you the details, as much that you'll share, of course, but I think a couple things that you said I do want to kind of hit home is that it doesn't stop in early stage dating. No. And we actually have an amazing episode this week all about just the dating behavior that holds you back. And I think one of the things that we have two guests, they're from 51 First Dates, another podcast that we've also been on. And it started as a dating experiment. And it really was all about how to understand one of the hosts, Kimmy, her dating behavior. And her friend Liza, she is actually in a committed relationship. And we asked her, like, why are you so interested in this stuff? And her response was, the same shit shows up, the same like challenges that people have, whether you're in early stage dating or you're with a monogamous partner. The only difference is that you have to have difficult conversations with someone you had a one night stand with versus your partner. Like it shifts the person. But if you don't do the inner work and like learn how to communicate and do all that, then it doesn't just magically go away when you find a partner. So, but now I want to hear about the lovely couple's anniversary. That's so exciting. 2 years. 2 years is crazy.
I think there are two major milestones in a new relationship. One's at 6 months and one's at 2 years. 6 months, you're just solidifying the relationship, building a foundation. And at 2 years is where real shit happens. That's when you're like, are we doing life together, or did we just have 2 years of the honeymoon together? And we definitely came to that this week. I think I had so many, I love to procrastinate, and there were so many conversations I wanted to have with him that I was saving for this week, which is the wrong way to do it, because after a few drinks, it all comes out at once. And he's like, whoa, where did all this come from? I'm like, I've been saving it for a whole month,
Yeah.
But that's the problem with not continuing to communicate with your partner on a regular basis, is that you build up and then you save it all for one time. So that was lesson number one. But I think the lesson number two I learned about myself was I am so guilty of CGS, cool girl syndrome. And that's something we talk about in this episode with Kimmy and Liza, which is like that. Sometimes when you're so independent and the society tells you to be the cool girl, you end up sacrificing your own needs just to give off this portrayal of a cool girl. Like, nothing matters. It's cool. I'm cool with everything. I'm so easygoing. And I think it's been really detrimental for me on a just mental health level, is that I've been just hiding all of these feelings or not letting them be known because I just want to give off the portrayal that I'm just really easygoing. I'm a cool girl. So I'm completely guilty of that. And this week we definitely talked about what my needs are, what his needs are. And I'm just really happy to say that I'm more in love with him than I've ever been. This is the closest I've ever felt with someone. And I'm just very grateful to have him in my life. But it took a lot of conversations to get there.
That's the thing, though. It's like, we dive into this in the episode, is when you play the cool girl, it doesn't actually bring people closer. Like, no. It is these vulnerable, tough conversations when things, we've learned this from past experts we've talked to too. I remember Dr. Alexandra Solomon said it wonderfully. It's like, conflict in a relationship is inevitable. Like, if you don't have any conflict, it probably means that someone's just holding it in, or the relationship isn't deep enough to warrant conflict. Yeah. So I think it's really like, when you are able to just have those difficult conversations, it's either, it's a win-win in either way. It brings you closer, like you were just saying, or it can make it really clear that you're on different pages. And that isn't a bad thing either. It's better to not be in denial and like thinking something is going a certain way if it's clearly not. So yeah, I'm glad that you felt closer. I think that's wonderful. I'm glad that you guys had those conversations. But yeah, this shit doesn't stop after you get the relationship. Like, the movie credits, like the way the movies work, the girl gets the guy gets the girl, guy gets the guy, whatever it is, and then it's over.
There.
No,
yeah,
definitely.
It does not stop there, actually. It's like, people who want to have kids and then they have kids and then there's just a whole other bag of issues. It's like life never stops giving you conflict and problems.
Absolutely.
Nothing stops. So get this, though. The universe works in very strange ways. So we went to Central Coast. Not many people go there, or at least that we know of. And we're in downtown SLO, San Luis Obispo. And we're about to get dinner. And we walk by this table. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy looks so familiar. Like why does he look so familiar from far away? And as we get closer, it is my fucking ex-boyfriend from 4 years ago. Yes.
Wait, what?
Yes. With his wife and his brother. Okay.
Wait, someone I know or no?
So the guy I dated the very first guy I dated in San Francisco, but then I moved to San Francisco and we broke up.
Okay. I never met him, but I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
I have not seen him since we broke up 4 years ago. And it was amicable, but also like I have not seen him and we both live in San Francisco. What are the chances that we run into each other in downtown SLO? So I'm like telling my boyfriend, I'm like, this is really crazy. What a small world. That is my ex-boyfriend with his now wife and his brother who I've met before too. And he's like, guess what, babe? I think we're going to sit right next to them as the waiter is cleaning that table right next to them.
Oh,
and like,
my
shit,
God.
you know, like at this
in a
point,
rom-com.
It is in a com. I wouldn't say it's a rom at all. And I just kept thinking like, should I go over there? Should I say something? Isn't it weird if I just don't say something and I sit right next to them? So of course, chances would be that we get seated right next to them and I go up to them and at this point, like I have a mask on, okay? And I've not seen this guy in 4 years. So I go over and I'm like, hey, like to him and his brother. And they both look at me like, who the fuck are you? Okay, but it gets even more awkward, Julie, because I have not been around people in a few months, except for my coworkers, that I forgot how to be social.
You've been with friends.
I don't need to be like, hey guys, around my own friends. This is an ex-boyfriend I haven't seen in 4 years. In true awkward UA fashion, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. I'm wearing my mask and I give him a hug.
Oh, God.
What am I doing? I'm like,
he's probably like, get away from me because
in front of his wife too, So I'm like, oh, it's Yue. And he's like, oh, as I'm reaching out to hug him.
Oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm not even there.
And I can just see his wife being like, what the fuck is she doing? Who is she? And it finally clicks for him and his brother. They're like, oh Yue, great to see you. But why the fuck are you hugging us during COVID times? I don't understand. But then it gets even more awkward because we're having like small talk, whatever. And I'm like, that's my boyfriend right there. So I introduce him. And the ex and the brother, both go over and shake his hand.
Oh my God. This is so awkward. I'm like so uncomfortable just listening to it.
So this is so cringy just in hindsight, but I cannot imagine how much cringier it is for both my boyfriend and the wife.
I feel like don't touch me. Like, I don't even want to touch my friends, yet alone my ex's new significant other. I definitely don't want to touch that person.
I am so guilty for starting this cringy train that I could no longer stop, and it just kept rolling. God. And I didn't know how to make this nightmare end. It was very, very awkward, but it's fine. I mean, I don't have any ill will for him. It was actually really great to see him. His wife is lovely. I've always liked his brother. It's just, what are the chances of running into them in downtown SLO in the middle of COVID?
I just can't believe he didn't recognize you. That's I get that you were in a mask, but still, that's do you think he just didn't want to? He's I'm with my new wife or whatever, or new wife, but I'm with my wife. I'm with my new wife, but you know what I mean. I just think I don't know. I feel like if you dated someone, wouldn't you remember them? It feels a little suspect to me. I don't know.
I mean, who knows, right? The whole thing was just a little unexpected. Also, it was out of context. If it was in San Francisco, maybe, but it was so
I'm sure
out of
that
context.
Was a piece. I actually ran into one of our past guests this weekend.
You did?
And I ran into one of our past guests, Margot. And she was with her new boyfriend. So for everyone that remembers Margot, we had a 2-part series with her. And the first part was about just trouble and unluck with men, and the second part was that she found love with a woman. So now, sometimes you gotta go full circle to figure shit out, but he seemed like a very lovely guy. They seemed really happy, but I will admit it was a little awkward because at first I was I didn't recognize her fully. And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then like, it was kind of like, oh, meet my boyfriend after. And I was like, should I introduce the people I'm with? It was just like, it was a little awkward too, but all good. I mean, I'll share my awkwardness of this weekend also now that we're down this
down this path.
Yeah, actually, I feel like I saw a bunch of our people in our dateable orbit, which is kind of funny. So I hung out with Lauren Korshak, who was one of our past guests. That was Attachment Theories for everyone that remembers. And then one of our current guests of this season, Dr. Abigail Lev, who's coming up for schemas. Great. So we have that in store for you all. So it was really fun. They're like the therapist crew that I got to hang out with. And we went for, it was like such a production this weekend because somehow the smoke actually got worse in SF.
Yes, I heard.
Yeah, like I don't understand because the fires are stopped. I think it's the wind patterns. Like it was actually fine in the week. And then this weekend, of course, magically it becomes intolerable. So pretty much like I was like, my eyes were watering yesterday. It was so bad in my house and my doors were shut, all of that. The marina, for some reason, was the only green area. I think it's like anywhere near water. So we went to the marina. It was like totally fine there. It was very bizarre. I'm like, how is like, for anyone that doesn't live in SF, I don't live that far from there.
Yeah, microclimates.
It's like a couple miles. It's like crazy. And it was like totally pure and fine. But what embarrassing thing that happened to me, I feel like we're in our COVID wear all the time.
Yes.
And, you got to walk places. So I wore my leggings with like actually, I think I might have worn the sweater I'm wearing right now with leggings. And I was like, oh, this is a cute COVID outfit. It's like comfortable.
COVID outfit.
It's
COVID approved.
It's an outfit that goes from COVID home attire to nighttime. Like I can wear it to a restaurant, right? So yeah, because I feel like, okay, like, I don't know, for like wearing jeans or like a dress when you have to walk like 2 miles, it's just not going to happen. So I'm wearing these new leggings I got, and I noticed that they like started to split in the middle, like
crotch
in
area?
The crotch.
Crotchless
and it was
leggings.
Like an hour, like luckily no one noticed because it didn't continue to spread, but I was like, this could have been really bad. Like, this could have been bad. So I'm like, okay, note to self, maybe just like pure COVID attire might not be the right transition that you're thinking. So I don't know. I have some nice like jumpsuits that I might be wearing now as new attire, like something that won't rip. Maybe like the tightness of them walking or whatever it was.
How did you notice they started ripping?
I went to the bathroom.
Oh, that's when you noticed?
Yeah, I went to the bathroom and I looked and there was a hole.
So if you didn't have to go to the bathroom, you would have never noticed?
I mean, no, but eventually I was going to go to the bathroom and thank God they just stopped ripping. Because like sometimes when things start to rip, it just goes downhill fast. Like I would have been totally fucked.
That's when you do the whole like sweater around the waist.
I was wearing just one sweater. I didn't have anything to put around the waist. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could have taken my jacket off. It was like freezing cold, and everyone's like, "Why are you wearing your jacket around your waist?" And I'm like
a diaper. It's
don't
weird.
bother me, It's like in the front instead of like on the back, so it doesn't even make sense. But yeah.
Oh,
anyways, that was my embarrassing thing for tonight. So I guess the advice I'm putting out there is, especially if you're on a date, maybe don't wear the leggings that are so cozy in your own home.
I didn't know there were lessons to be learned in this. I thought it was just to commiserate.
My takeaway is I am not wearing these out again.
Or if you're trying to, give off a different kind of message there. Like, oh, I didn't know these were crotchless leggings.
Exactly. It's a new COVID style.
Wow. Okay. So eventful week for both of us. Shifting gears to Would You Rather. Last week, we had a very controversial question, very controversial Would You Rather. So the question was, would you rather date someone whose political stance is apathetic, like they couldn't care less about politics, or someone who has very strong political beliefs, but they're opposite of yours? And I kind of knew where this would be headed in terms of polling, but I didn't realize how mad people would get at this question.
Yes.
Like they were mad at me for even posing it. Okay. That's how personally people took it. I'm like, guys, it's just a would you rather. It's not the real world.
The point is to be extreme. Everyone's like, we need an option in the middle.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, that's the
yeah.
I get it. It's not ideal. No one's saying it's ideal.
That's the whole point of would you rather. It's not supposed to be ideal. If it were ideal, then you knew like it'd be easier for you to pick which answer. So with that said, Julie, what would be your answer?
You know, I actually flip-flopped on this one. I know, which is kind of crazy. I know, I think about it way too much. I really like to reason with these would you rathers. So I actually watched the RNC the first night, and I must say that it was the most comedic value I've received in a long ass time. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone that shares the values here, but I'm just going to say it. I won't go too much on it, but it was someone wrote it, like one of the news outlets wrote it up as like an SNL skit gone bad, like an actual SNL skit. And it was like, I mean, like Kimberly Garfoyle, or however you pronounce her name. She's Donald Trump Jr.'s or Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend. She was literally screaming her entire speech. It was just crazy town. So at first I was like, when I thought about this question, I'm like, oh my God, what if I was sitting next to someone that actually thought this was like legit? And I'm like, I don't think I could do that. But then the other side is like having someone that has just no opinions is bad too. My aunt and uncle live in a divided household for politics. My aunt and uncle that you've met.
Yeah.
Who are both very educated, lovely people. But my uncle and cousins are all hardcore Democrats, and my aunt is hardcore Republican.
Interesting.
And I think it's like one of those things that, I mean, there's been times that they're like, we need to just stop having the conversation. Like I remember they were actually even visiting me at SF, and my uncle was like, this is Democrat city, like stop, you know? But I think it's one of those things. I was thinking about it, I'm like, they're very happy in every other way. And I very much respect my aunt intellectually and in every way possible. Yeah. But the other side of it is they've been married for years. I think starting in where the political climate was not what it is today. I think like politics used to be more like, I don't know, it wasn't as front and center, I feel like. Like it wasn't something that people talked about in terms of dating and relationships. And it wasn't as tied to social issues. So after much debate, I went back to the side of having someone long-term that had totally polar opposite views would probably drive me insane. So I'm going to have to go with I'd rather have someone that doesn't have a strong opinion. I don't know how you can have a strong opinion right now, but maybe I could persuade them in some way.
Got it. Okay.
What would you do?
This one was actually a little easier for me just because I think I have a lot of family members who have opposing political views as me, and we get along just fine. It's just that we have more interesting discussions and conversations. And they never talk down to me, and I don't talk down to them. It's not a matter of like I think I'm better or they think they're better. So I do think there is an opportunity for a couple to have healthier discussions if their political views aren't aligned. I also think the chances of someone changing their views are a lot higher than someone changing from apathy to caring. And I say this because I've experienced this in a previous relationship. Apathy is nowhere I want to touch. I don't want to be with someone who didn't care. And to be with someone who didn't care means, one, I think they have a lot of emotional barriers that they haven't worked through. And that's not my job to help them with that breakthrough, but that's like years of therapy that they need to do, and they're quite numb in that way. Yeah. And if I can't have healthy conversations because they don't care, there's no point in moving forward with a relationship. So that's why I rather be with someone who has opposite views where we can have healthy discussions than someone who just didn't give a shit.
You know what's so interesting is because I feel like I used to be more apathetic about politics. And over the years, I've definitely gotten a lot more invested in it and interested in it and definitely have a strong view. So I do think it's possible to change, but then also at the same time, in the current climate is different than a past climate. So if you don't have a view in the current climate, I can see what you're saying of, will you ever have a view if you don't have one now?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think maybe choosing either one of these options is kind of the same because you can't predict the future. People will always change, and you never know what they'll feel 5 years down the line. But I think it's just more about how you think you can approach someone who does have either no views or different views, and how you can have a healthier discussion with them. So the result of this is okay. So on Instagram, when we did the poll, it was 75% apathy and 25% opposite views. But on our Facebook page, I believe it was 99% apathy and 1%
People were
views.
really upset on the Facebook page. I
also understand why, because when you vote on Facebook, it shows your name. Right? So if everyone's voting the other way, it's a little harder to put your name out there to vote for the unpopular.
I think the Instagram might be a more accurate quant metric, but I think Facebook is good because you get to see the qual of why, right?
Yeah. It was a really good discussion. I'm sorry if people got really mad about it. I mean, literally people were like, fuck you for this question. Like, hey guys, that's not the whole point. We're just trying to have some discussion here.
I think it's a good question. I actually thought it was a good question because it's testing extremes. That's the point of a would you rather, is to test extremes. So.
Yeah, perfect. That was exactly what it was supposed to be.
We are sorry, though, if we offended anyone. Obviously, the ideal is neither of these. We're not saying it is. So, yeah.
But if you'd like to be part of this discussion on Facebook, because every week we have really interesting discussions in our Facebook group, join our group. It's called Love in the Time of Corona by the DATEABLE podcast. We have, I think we have some of the most interesting and insightful discussions I've seen, especially this week. We had a discussion about dating with grief. You know, this woman posted that she lost her father recently, but she's also trying to date. Thought that was a really fascinating discussion. And it's just, I think it's like a very healthy environment for people just to talk things out.
With men and women, we always there's very few communities that you get both perspectives in all ages, all ethnicities. Like, we've got it covered. It's a diverse group for sure.
It's fantastic. And another way to connect with us is through our Instagram page. We post all the time, but we also just solicit your opinions and stories. We talk back and forth quite a bit if you slide into our DMs. We're not shy about that at all. So that's also a great way to connect with us. And if you just love us in general, ratings are always very helpful. We'll say this every week, but if you can give us 5 stars in on the Apple Podcast Store. Is that what it is? Like a podcast store? I don't even know. You're not shopping for podcasts.
I don't know if it's, it used to be the iTunes store. Now it's Apple Podcasts. They went through a rebrand.
Oh, that's what it is. That's why it's so confusing. But 5 stars. It's still 5 stars. Give us a review. We really appreciate it. It really helps with our rankings and also like the quality of guests we're able to bring on the show.
Yes. Thank you for everyone that did that already. It's so helpful.
Yeah. And a fourth way to connect with us is YouTube. Yay! It's really interesting that we read somewhere that a lot of people do consume podcasts through YouTube. So we kind of revamped our YouTube channel. We kind of it was kind of like the middle child for a while. We just didn't even think about it. Yeah. But now we've rebranded it. We have merged it with my old YouTube channel. So this is more an announcement for anybody who's on our Dateable Podcast YouTube channel. We're shutting down that channel and we're going to migrate everything over to another channel called Dateable. It's just called Dateable. And you'll see a lot more subscribers there. We're already pushing content over there. So you'll have about 2 weeks from today to get yourself resubscribed over there. We'll stop posting here already. So that's just another exciting migration.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I love these little chat videos that are going up. So a lot of good stuff that's happening there.
And another excuse for us to actually brush our hair and put on makeup during these times.
Another excuse to republish the decorator video also for anyone that is new and has not seen that. It is a treat.
Our legendary video. Just wait for that. Another announcement we have is we are part of the Frolic Network, where a lot of great podcasts are a part of as well. So we want to promote one of those podcasts on this week's episode. This podcast is called Dinner Sisters. It's a very interesting concept. It's two sisters who give out 3 recipes on each episode, but then they talk about like how they got to these 3 recipes. Some of these recipes come with really funny stories. Like one sister didn't know she had to gut a fish before you cook it. So it's like one part they're dynamic and one part you get really great recipe ideas.
Perfect for quarantine.
Yeah, exactly. And for someone who's an only child, I like to live vicariously through them, through their sibling relationship. So you can find out more about them, dinnersisters.com, and you can find them on all the different podcast players. And then last but not least, BetterHelp, please help me. Well, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. They've been with us for a long time. We really appreciate them. And it's just good that we can all take some time for our mental health. In these unprecedented times, some of us may be experiencing some feelings that it's hard to decipher like what's really going on. And so one of those ways is working with a mental health professional. BetterHelp has ensured me personally that I'm not alone in whatever it is that I'm going through. So they offer online counseling with professional, credible, and compassionate therapists in a safe and private environment. With over 3,000 US licensed professionals across all 50 states, they make it easier than ever to find help. And they're also looking for additional counselors in all 50 states because there's been so much demand. So now for Dateable listeners only, you get 10% off your first month with the code DATEABLE. Get started today by going to betterhelp.com/dateable. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's betterhelp.com/dateable and use the code DATEABLE for 10% off your first month.
Love it. So now to our episode. I feel like we've had so many things to talk about, but I'm really excited to release this episode this week. We alluded to it earlier, but we have Kimmy and Liza from 51 First Dates, and we hear all about their dating experiment. But more importantly, what are these like things that are holding you back from, like having authentic relationships and really taking that next step, whatever stage you're at? So yeah, it's a good one for anyone, no matter where they are in terms of relationships and dating.
Here's our conversation with Kimmy and Liza from 51 First Dates. How many of you have ever fantasized about doing a dating experiment and then talking about it on a podcast? Well, all of us, right? And what if I told you that 2 women actually did that? They put a dating experiment into a podcast, and the podcast is still going, but the experiment's pretty much done. But we're here to talk to Kimmy and Liza from 51 First Dates about how this whole experiment started, but also just like, what did they learn? So I will introduce them now. Kimmy is 31 years old. She lives in LA. Well, she's currently not in LA, but she technically lives in LA, originally from Boston, and she's in a monogamous relationship. And Liza's 32 years old. She lives in New York. She's been there for 10 years, originally from Connecticut, and she is engaged. Hi, ladies.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. And that lovely official intro. I love it.
I mean, this has just been my fantasy for a long time. We've done like kind of episodes of dating experiments, but not the entire show. So this is why it's great to live vicariously through you. But Kimmy, I understand that your therapist was the one that recommended you to go on lots of dates to break some bad dating habits. So
Absolutely.
Why do you think this was the quote unquote prescription? And how did you two decide to make a podcast out of it?
Oh, fun. Okay. No, I just feel like I haven't talked about this in a minute. So I'm just like, oh yeah, this is how it started. So my therapist, who in a wild, turn of events, not turn of events, but wildly is also Liza's therapist. We did have the same therapist for some
No way.
Accidentally. We didn't know for a while.
Wait, you guys didn't plan it? It just,
No.
Wow.
We both were referred by the same person and
Yes.
ended up with the same therapist and didn't know it for a while.
It was very early on in our friendship. And then I think actually finding out that we had the same therapist bonded us in a way that, totally changed everything.
It's kind of like finding out you're dating the same person, but like not as scandalous.
completely.
But yeah, so my therapist, had heard me sit in her office and really just complain about these half relationships, fuckboy situations, whatever you want to call them, for years, truly like 6 years. And she was like, you act as though you've done a lot of dating in New York, but you really just dated like the same people you knew it wasn't going to work out with for a while. And she was much kinder than I'm being to myself right now. But basically she was like, some people go on a date like every night, every week. This is New York. Why don't you try like go on 100 dates or something? And she wasn't prescribing as much as maybe just like being like, you could do that. Like put your mind to something. I also think at this point she knew me well enough to know if there was a goal, I'm very goal oriented, I might be able to do it.
Did she expect you to create a podcast?
Oh no. So
She should have. She knows Kimmy and I are both project people.
yeah. So Liza and I also, our friendship blossomed once we found out we had the same therapist. And then we actually, the first project we ever worked on together, we used to produce videos together. We did branded content. We did like internet comedy content for different brands and for ourselves. But the first thing we ever made was a web series way back in 2013 about seeing the same therapist. So that it sounds fake, but this is how the genesis of our entire friendship. So anyways, she probably had some idea. Yes. That, maybe if I give her a goal, she'll turn it into a project and then like finally, move on from this guy she's been talking about for too long. So I was like, let's cut it in half. Let's make it 50 because that's more achievable. And let's riff on like a very old, very terrible Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore movie. And we'll do 51 first dates because of copyright. But no, really, I think Liza, you might have, obviously a different vision, but Liza's always been such a supportive friend and supportive, but also a realist in helping me like kind of take back some power in dating. And, the year we actually started it, it had been an idea we kicked around, but like not totally related, but my mom passed away after a long fight with breast cancer. And I think I was craving a project as well. In hindsight, did I need to like talk about people I was going on dates with? I don't know.
Hey, it led you to where you are now. So,
And just, to lightly pat ourselves on the back, we always talked about everyone anonymously with no identifying features. And we tried to bring a spirit of like kindness to discussing all of Kimmy's dates because, the guy on the other side of those dates was also making themselves vulnerable. And I think we always tried to like keep that in the forefront of our minds when we were talking about stuff, except for once or twice when we just had to bitch. Probably.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really admire about your experiment is that the goal wasn't to find Kimmy the love of her life. The goal was to uncover some of these dating habits that you had, look at the trends and behaviors,
right,
and figure out what are the next steps. So it wasn't just about like finding the guy to complete your life.
Yes.
Wait, so did the guys know about it? Like when you went on dates, did you tell them at all or no?
I mean, mostly no. I was about to be like, sort of, but then I was like, there's an entire podcast. Some did. I did like a timeout New York undateables. I don't know if you guys have this in SF too. Yeah, I did that. So, and I went on a match made date. That's not how you would say it, but a matchmaker set me up and he knew. I told people pretty soon, but at the beginning, I really wasn't telling them for 3 dates. And that wasn't cool.
A couple people had Googled her and found out like,
yeah,
they're
going to find out eventually, right? So what were the parameters of this original experiment? Because I'm guessing that at some point you can't, you're not talking about like minute details of the date, but you kind of have to give away some things, right? Like they're anonymous, but you're giving away some character details.
Let's hold that thought for a sec. We'll get right back to it.
As you know, I recently left my corporate job and I've been in total recovery mode, all about self-care. One of my new routines is the nighttime shower before bed. There's just something about washing away the day and that reflection that's been super helpful for me. I've been using one of our partners, Osea's Mega Moisture Duo. This combo body oil and body lotion are so freaking incredible. It literally feels like I'm at a spa. I realized that the secret is seaweed and other skin level ingredients that are normally reserved for face products. And that's why I was so excited when Osea became one of our partners. And, we're so grateful for partners like this because one, they keep the show going, but they're also super good for all of our listeners and for our own well-being. So if you want to have that nighttime bliss like I am doing, you can get 10% off your first order site-wide with code DATEABLE at oseamalibu.com. You'll get free samples with every order and free shipping on orders over over $60. So head to OSEAMalibu.com and use the code DATEABLE for 10% off. Let us know which products you end up going with. Share them in social. Super excited to see what you end up choosing.
This episode is made possible by Armoire. Armoire makes getting dressed easy. With a clothing rental membership from Armoire, build the perfect wardrobe with brands that are high quality, unique, and recommended just for you. All you have to do is take a 5-minute style quiz and select items from your dynamic, personalized closet. The styles show up at your door in as little as 2 days. Then when you're ready for new clothes, just swap them out. Listen, I live in Southern California. There is absolutely no need for puffer coats or any sort of those winter jackets. But when I travel anywhere else in the world in these cold months, I'm often burdened with the task of getting winter clothes. And now with Armoire, I can just rent my winter wardrobe. It's brilliant. Right now, our listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. Just visit armoire.style/dateable. That is armoire.style, spelled ARMOIRE.style/DATEABLE to get up to 50% off your first month and never worry about what to wear again. Try Armoire today.
Yeah, I guess so. I think maybe at the beginning, like I would say I probably shared, I think we were careful. Someone's going to dig one up and be like, no, you did talk about people's school, for example, or what they did for work. But since I did the dates, we've had 2 other daters go on 51 First Dates. Neither has made it all the way, one due to finding a relationship. That was my brother. He, begrudgingly but generously became our new dater. So we got a male perspective for a while. And then our lovely dater, Olivia, who has just, because of COVID, we weren't going to force her to go on all these online dates.
Go on horrible, shitty FaceTime dates.
Wait, so Liza, what got you into this? As someone that was in a relationship, what were you like, I need to work with Kimmy on this?
I mean, I just have been trash at relationships and communicating about my feelings my whole life. And I think I got really lucky to date someone who is extremely gifted at talking about feelings and kind of taught me how to do it. And that I think is just a pure dice roll, straight luck. I'm still bad at it. I talk to our therapist every week about it. But I mean, I had been in all the same places Kimmy was. The fact that I was in a relationship at the time of us making the podcast and I'm still with that person doesn't change that I had been in all the same situations, had been super attached to people who were not into me or who just weren't treating me that well. Or I had gotten into destructive patterns around situationships or fuckboys or whatever. So part of it is just I think that dating right now is super interesting and unprecedented and I love talking about it. And the other part is just that I love talking. And so a podcast seemed good. And I love talking about feelings and I love talking to my female friends and deconstructing people's brains and why people do crazy things or great things. So it was really fun to talk to Kimmy about all these random humans she met. She did all of the brave work of putting herself out there and meeting them. And I got to sit in her former apartment in Greenpoint and drink and talk to her about it. So it was kind of win-win for me. Yeah, totally.
By the way, I love that you're a self-proclaimed drunk feminist. I think that is basically us to a T as well. And I can totally see these conversations happening. Okay, so I want to bring something up. And Julie knows I love The Bachelor, The Bachelorette. That's my thing. Just trashy reality TV. And I don't know if you've heard about this, the latest gossip with Claire, who's supposed to be the newest Bachelorette. And she, apparently they've been looking for a replacement for her. And there's a couple rumors, but one of them is she already found the man of her dreams 12 days into filming. So obviously this, for your experiment as well, this could have been a possibility. So what were the rules around what if you found someone you really liked? Do you still go through with all of the dates?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Now I feel like I'm a little bit Claire adjacent. No. Well, because we didn't have such a massive production budget and like amount of money riding on us. There weren't really specific rules. Liza was always like, do what you want. Like I had not been in a real serious relationship really ever. So for me, it was like, this isn't going to work out. I'm also, when we started, I knew I was applying to grad school and I knew I wasn't applying in New York. So I was like, even like I'm probably a year and a half out from moving. So, just give it a shot. Liza, did we have a rule? I forget.
I mean, I don't think it was a rule. I think that it was kind of the whole thing was an experiment, right? Like we didn't have any expectations about how it was going to turn out, because with an experiment, you just kind of make a hypothesis and go, and then you have to accept whatever. Guys, I was a theater major and I'm talking about the scientific process. So let's... I'm going to go ahead and move on. But I think we didn't have a ton of expectations going in. I think the hope was just to like examine some of Kimmy's dating patterns and like the dating patterns of a lot of millennial women, especially in New York, which is a notoriously like weird city to date. I mean, we say that, but also we've absolutely learned from doing this podcast is that every city is a weird city to date in, just for different reasons.
We've learned the same exact.
Yeah, totally. So I think that, and weirdly similar to The Bachelorette this year, we did exactly what happened. Like Kimmy met someone, and we started bringing in Tayshia's left and right. And it's funny because like we had Kimmy's brother go on dates, which was really, really cool. We were kind of starting my like cousin / best friend going on dates, and she met her now super serious boyfriend on date number like 4 or something. Wow. So we've had some people, kind of come in, and we've been in the Claire and Tayshia situation before, and we kind of just keep chugging on, and then we don't have people dating. Like we just talk about dating because it's still endlessly fascinating.
Julie's very lost right now. So Tayshia is like the backup to Claire for The Bachelorette. And they've already reached out to her.
Fan.
But she's like so much more interesting than Claire. I'm like way more excited for Tayshia.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Wait, so Kimmy, can you tell us, like I know you mentioned that you didn't really have like a relationship prior to this. Like what was your dating life like? Like if you had to sum it up before the experiment.
Yeah, I was in like a very short relationship in college with someone I had gone to high school with that ended when he, met someone at his college that he fell for. And that had been my pattern, I realized, since like truly my first kiss. I don't know where this is not therapy, but I've just had issues around like measuring a lot of self-worth around men. And Liza, I hope you will back me up. My dad and my brother are really like emotionally in touch, available men. Like I didn't have a bad example in the traditional sense. And I think then moving to New York, like what I realize now is I had like some really big crushes that were infatuations that I turned into something more in my head when I was like 21 to 24 that I really should have shut down sooner. Then later in my 20s, it was like meeting people and being in these sort of relationship things with them and thinking it was going to change and being really set on when it would change or the challenge of making it change and kind of measuring my worth on if they were into me. It wasn't like just a hookup that went on too long. It was like, no, we're being romantic together and you're giving me this attention and then you come back. I mean, I feel like anyone listening has been in one of those like push-pull too long things that it's awful. I think just whatever it is about my personality, like right before this podcast, it was really like me being way too hung up on a dude who was like literally the second person I'd ever gone on an online date with and who I thought was going to be really interested in me. And then who, similar to me, was about to move away for grad school like 8 months later. And I thought it was going to go somewhere and it didn't, but I like pined over him for we like still hung out for 2 years and then there was another year to try to get over it. I don't know. Just deeply scarring. It's not his fault though. I was totally complicit. And I think if in terms of like summing up what my relationship to relationships is, it's just a lot of like thinking I needed one. And now looking back, I needed a serious relationship to be like accepted as a cool person in the world. But looking back, it's like no one was judging you that hard, A. But B, now that I'm in one, it doesn't make me any different of a person. It doesn't make me a better, I don't feel like I'm a more valuable human in society. And like I really value my independence through my 20s, actually, in hindsight. So I don't know. It was like just a lot of being single or in weird situations.
And Liza, did you have like a diagnosis for Kimmy, or is it similar to what she just said?
Oh yeah, tell me. It'll be different.
I mean, I think it's not going to be anything that we haven't talked about, but I think that Kimmy did what a lot of us did, which was put a lot of power in the hands of the people who like deigned to like us or not like us or date us or not date us or fuck us or not want to fuck us. I'm sorry, can I swear?
Yeah,
Okay,
of course.
great.
Please.
Say fuck
Do
all you
more.
want.
Do more of it.
Amazing, gorgeous. I think that, you know, especially as women, drunk feminism, we so often like place our value in like how others see us, right? Like, does someone want me? Does someone want to date me, get engaged to me, marry me, whatever, all of these things. And I think it stops a lot of people, myself included, from like really laying claim to what they want and not just being in a lack mentality of accepting what's given to them. And if someone's giving you like a something that is less than what you want, I think it's like we're not really trained or socialized to be like, no, hey, I want this and you're not giving it to me, so either give it to me or fuck off. And I kind of think that, yeah, like Kimmy was not used to saying what she wanted and like really demanding it from the people who she was dating. I mean, one of the reasons that Kimmy and I are close and one of the reasons we wanted to do this podcast is like, that's exactly what I did always. And even in my current relationship, like I almost fucked it up at the beginning multiple times by not being upfront with my feelings. And he had to be like, excuse me, you're not telling me anything about how you feel, or like you're half in this and that's annoying because I want to be all in this. So can you just tell me if you're in or not? And then we can like figure it out. You know, I really had to be like shaken by the shoulders and forced to say what I wanted from someone.
So do you think that's what broke your pattern? Your bad dating pattern was basically meeting someone who wanted you to communicate more?
I think that was 50% of it, maybe 60% of it. I think the other amount was going to therapy and building up a lot of self-esteem. It was something that, again, I had a really like, I have really great, incredible parents who I think are kind, good people. And I have a lot of privilege and advantages in the world. And I still somehow managed to make it to like 23 when I started going to therapy with just like the shittiest self-esteem. And, you know, you can't be happy with another person in that position. So I spent a lot of years going to therapy and just trying to not constantly doubt myself and not think I didn't deserve anything good and not think I was like ugly and mean and dumb and all of these things. So
I was going to say I totally blame like media and bad books because I feel like I can relate so much to what you're saying. Like I remember for years being like, oh, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to scare them off, or I'll just play it cool. That was like the biggest thing. It was like,
my God,
oh,
completely.
the cool girl situation. It's like, I don't want to bring anything up and rock the boat in any way because I would rather have this like breadcrumb of a situation than nothing at all.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
I think the toxicness of that is ingrained. It was ingrained in women. I also blame Cosmo and magazines like
Totally.
that.
Those like 90s and early aughts rom-coms and magazines and TV shows really did a number
Fucked us all. Basically.
Well, so the problem really is because you could come from a really good family, but that love is portrayed differently than romantic love. Like the love you get from your family is given to you regardless of whether you wanted it or not, right? But for some reason, media and society portrays romantic love as a pageant. People choose you. So therefore you have to act, dress, look a certain way to win this pageant in order to be chosen. And that's where that low self-esteem comes from, because as soon as we feel any sort of rejection, we feel like we have not been chosen. We're being left behind.
Absolutely. I think also it stems from like early, like if you don't see that in like high school or even like middle school, when that's starting to happen, like it builds up that like low self-esteem that goes way into your 20s and 30s, which is, and potentially even 40s and 50s, like if you don't do therapy and like really try to like do that self-love.
And this is really getting into the bad dating patterns that you were seeing, Kimmy, as you went onto this experiment. First of all, how many dates did you go on to meet your current boyfriend?
He was date 13.
Okay,
Like,
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
But I went on 32 dates. I kept going on dates. So that I'll just share. Yeah.
You went on 32 dates and you started seeing some patterns. Let's go through some of the patterns. We already mentioned one, which is being the cool girl. Explain to everybody what the cool girl syndrome is.
Oh man, I feel like it takes different forms, maybe. But for me, it was definitely prior to going on these dates, the cool girl syndrome, like in a broader way, was acting like I was cool with whatever level of relationship the guy I was dating wanted without asking for what I wanted. I would be kind of passive aggressive about what I wanted and send some texts like that, but that's unfair to them as well. So that's cool girl syndrome. Cool girl syndrome for me was not listening to myself and speaking up for myself, not even in big ways, in small ways, and asking for what I wanted. Like, it's okay to want a relationship where the other person isn't dating other people if that's what you want, and vice versa. If you want to date other people, that's fine too, but the communication. But when I started going on more dates, I think the cool girl syndrome kind of, or a mutation of it for me, was kind of just going on a date and defaulting to like, oh yeah, let's have that second drink because the other person offered a second drink. Or I don't know, I'm thinking early on, because the first dates I went on, I didn't have like a great batting average. I wasn't getting asked on second dates. And that was just throwing me into like a tizzy. And there was like a part of me at the beginning that wanted to just be like, try to ask them on a second date. But I was so cool about all that, or I'd act like it, I don't know. I think I just like believed everything coming out of my dates' mouths, but nothing in my own head. And there was definitely like a balance, a meeting in the middle. So I think my cool girl, while actually going on the dates, like evolved from trying to be cool and make every guy I went on a date with like me and want a second date, whether or not I wanted to go on a second date, to like being like, this is a mutual decision. And sometimes we don't have the same opinion, but like, let me decide for myself if I like you, not just like, I want the next man to like me, because then that means another check mark that I'm worthy or something. So
I don't know if this happened to you, but I feel like when I was definitely in that same boat, that I'm like, I don't want to rock the boat. I just want to get that second date. Like, not even thinking like, do I even like this person?
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I feel like when you're doing that, you're not really showing any of your personality. You're kind of just like blending in, and you're just, a chameleon, right? Like, you could literally be interchanged with any other person. Did you feel like that? Like, did you feel like your personality was showing, or in retrospect, were there things that you would have changed?
No, it's a good question. I bet it wasn't showing as much as it could. Like, I don't know. I feel like, there's always a fine line on a first date. I don't want to be like my truest self, because then I don't even know if anyone would ever be with me, just with like my insecurities and or like strong opinions on certain things. But yeah, I don't think I was doing my personality justice, maybe. I think if I actually went back to those moments, I would totally look at myself like as a fly on the wall and be like, that's not you. That's some other version. That's date Kimmy or something.
And Liza, where does the cool girl syndrome show up in a relationship?
I mean, I think that in early stages of a relationship, it's almost like this game of chicken of like, who's going to talk about exclusivity? Who's going to say I love you first? Like, who's going to bring up meeting parents? Like, who's going to talk about moving in together? I feel like there can be this, I think these exact same patterns can play out in a committed relationship. The thing of like, I'm not going to do this first because he should do it. And, blah, blah, blah. And I think like in a previous relationship was super victim of this. Like, I just was like, I'm going to completely lock myself down and just seem so chill all the time.
Yeah.
And like, just not be serious about anything. And it was my first relationship and I was a baby and whatever it was. And I was in my early 20s. But that was my idea of like being someone who was, I thought being someone who was easy to be in a relationship with was like the ultimate goal. So I think it can appear at any time. And yeah, I think we're all just really socialized to do that. The idea of being like a difficult woman is now becoming kind of cool. But I think especially when we were younger, it really wasn't. Like, Kimmy and I recently rewatched the first season of Sex and the City for our Patreon. I promise I'm not trying to plug that. But we like have been doing some rewatches and talking about like some of the rom-com and media that shaped us. And rewatching the first season of Sex and the City, I was like, oh, that's where I got this shitty dating concept and this shitty dating
really
concept and this one.
When you rewatch it.
Yeah. And so much about it is just not telling It's like Carrie not telling Big how she feels or what she wants or what she needs. And that was so ingrained. And so for me, that's similar to what Kimmy was saying earlier. Like, being in a relationship does not solve your problems. It just translates them to a relationship. So if you have a problem talking about your feelings, like with a guy you've been having sex with for a while and you're not sure what it is, like I think it will be the exact same with someone who you guys are committed and have met each other's parents.
That's a really good point.
I used to pride myself on being called low maintenance. If a guy was like, "You're really low maintenance," I'd be like, "Yeah, that's right." I was like so proud of it.
Yeah.
But looking back, it just translated to me not expressing my needs and telling him how I felt. That's what low maintenance is. It made me forgettable. He literally did not have to maintain a relationship with me.
Well, I think the other piece too is it builds up resentment because no one is that cool. Like, especially if they're getting walked all over, you're just not. You're just putting up a face that you're cool. And I think it even translates to, I know for me, like I always used to have these like rigid, I blame this horrible book, like Why Men Love Bitches. I don't know if any of you read that.
I've never read it, but I've heard
fucking
about it.
horrible. Don't ever read it. And I blame that book, and it was like, you cannot text them for you cannot be the first one to text. So I'd be like frantically looking at my phone, waiting for like that person to text. And I'm sure like the energy I gave back, like when they finally did, was not authentic at all. And I know for me personally, as soon as I dropped those behaviors, that's when things fell into place. But I think it goes into the cool girl stereotype too, because you don't want to seem overeager.
Yeah, and it all underscores that thing that so many women have internalized, which is it's more important to be in a relationship than to be yourself. Like, it's basically saying, don't be yourself, sacrifice that for the good of maintaining a relationship, like a romantic relationship. Every woman I know, except for some of the very cool young Gen Z women I know who are so much cooler than us.
They're different. They're
my God.
Because they haven't gotten these messages.
No,
that's why.
and what's so crazy is like the things we watch and consume really matter so much. But above a certain age, every woman I know has internalized some version of that, of like suppress some part of your personality. And Kimmy and I both have said a million times to our listeners, like, the right person for you is the person you meet and immediately you're like, I'm completely myself around you. And it's a feeling that is so obvious once you feel it. And before you feel it, it's like you have no idea.
And it confuses men too. So it's like, it also plays to that side. Like, when you're the cool girl and everything is fine, they can feel when it's not fine, or when you're holding something back and expecting them to be a mind reader. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that's when I've blown up at people, is when I've like suppressed it for too long, opposed to just saying it.
Yeah. Just say it. Because I mean, we're like all hetero, and Liza and I, we talk very heteronormatively on our podcast, and often about like women dealing with these pressures, which I do think just like society in the US, there is a certain pressure on women to find a relationship. But, when we really zoom out, it's like, just say it for anyone, because vulnerability is difficult, even, if you're not the woman in the relationship or you're dating another woman and you're a woman. Like, it's about like when you feel that you're not being true to yourself. Sorry, I'm like on some soapbox now. Like, it comes down to vulnerability. I feel like there's just like a culture in the US that is changing, but that for so long made vulnerability uncool. And that compounded all this other messaging that we got, for me at least. And it's like, just say it. Yeah, Julie, you put it so, it's so simple and it's so hard, because if you don't just say it, you will explode in like rage drunken texts.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation. I used to have, and I still do, my friends' husbands would text me and say, so-and-so says she didn't want flowers for Valentine's Day. Do you think she means it? Talking about their own wives, so asking me as a friend. And I would have to ask my friend and say, you said you didn't want flowers for Valentine's Day. Did you really mean it? And she would say, it would be nice if you just got it without me asking for it. I mean, it's just stuff like that, like just.
Well, that comes from like the princess stereotype, like Disney movies. I feel like that stems from that, like someone sweeping you off your feet, like all that shit. That's just not a realistic relationship.
Yeah.
And you're right. We just have to just say it. Like, you're not losing. There's no winning or losing in a relationship. You're just trying to get your needs met, both of your needs.
Yeah, I feel like I lost way more when I didn't say things in these half relationships because they dragged on forever and my life was like tortured. It was so painful, like very painful. You know, I know in the grand scheme of my life, I won't look back and be like, you know, that was so hard. I could never relive it. But in moments it was. And I could have saved myself that torture had I more clearly stated, I want to be in a relationship with you rather than, why aren't you texting me this weekend? Like, Kimmy.
Right. So let's talk about your half relationships, because I feel like that's another one, because I was definitely guilty of this. I overstayed relationships that clearly were not relationships. When a guy would flat out say he didn't want to be in a relationship, I'm like, why did I stay in that? Did that happen to you?
Situationships.
Yeah, situationships, whatever I like situationships. That's good. Yeah, I feel like, you know, and Liza, it was a great friend through this, listening to so many things. And, you know, I've been a friend in other moments, but it's when you can't be talked out of something. It wasn't like it happened with every guy, but like I would, especially if there were a lot of boxes that were being checked, which I feel very embarrassed about, but like, we get along. We have the same interests. Like I'd get kind of box checky before I would be like, but does he always make me feel comfortable? You know? And I think some of the situationships, the male party could have done a little better of a job because it was very clear. Like I was giving off all the signs and like light wording around like, be in a relationship with me or where is this going? And there were kind of half-assed answers back. Like I think when you actually get a full I can't be in a relationship with you, it gets a little easier. But I don't know. I'm just babbling now because I'm going back to these times and I'm like, what was I doing?
I don't know. I've been there before when someone has explicitly said that, but there was still something in my mind that was like, I'm going to prove him wrong.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Why did I do that? That's so fucked up. But that's like, it was a reality.
It did happen at a certain point. Yeah. You know what the thing is for me? I can't be friends with that person then, but he might want to be friends. And then it might feel good to talk to him and catch up. And then it might get flirty. And then it might make me feel like there's something that's going to happen someday. And it was just a circumstance. And that is where, if I trusted my gut, like if someone is not interested, they're not interested in a relationship. It doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It's like, just take them at their word because fuck that.
Liza, did you have any situationships or anything like that?
I mean, I did. I had one in which I was kind of the asshole. I had a lot of really, really massive crushes, and like the guy just never liked me back. Like I had huge crushes on friendships that I think like if they had liked me at all, it would have quickly become a situationships. Like we would have started sleeping together, and then I wouldn't be in the same position, but they just never really wanted to sleep with me. So it just didn't quite get there. But I did have one where the guy was more invested than I was, which was like a weird situation to be in. And so I kind of found myself in this position of having kind of sympathy or empathy for, I don't want to say empathy because I don't like how I acted in this situation. I think basically I got into a place, I found myself able to relate to some of these fuckboys because I got in a place where I was like, this guy likes me a lot and he's hot and he's like really nice to me, like gets me nice gifts, like super like attentive and sweet and like in a way that no one had ever been to me. He was like expressing that he was catching feelings and I just wasn't. I just didn't feel like I didn't feel like he and I connected super emotionally. I thought it was just kind of like he was nice and fun and down for anything. We had good chemistry and I was like, great, this is cool. Like I'll tell him I don't want a relationship. Like we can keep it chill. And I think I let it go on way longer than I should have, knowing that he was developing feelings. And I don't think I felt any responsibility to him because I thought I had made my intentions clear. And I think that what I learned from being in that position on that side of a situationship is like, you absolutely have responsibility to the other person. Like, it's just, you know, just by saying like, sorry, like I like you, but I'm not really in a place to be in a relationship. Like I was recently off a breakup and I was kind of, you know, riding on that. I mean, like I just got out of a relationship and I just want to keep things casual. Like I don't want to be exclusive. Like I don't want any of that. It was unkind. And I regret doing that.
So why do you think you did it? Because I feel like there's like the why, because I can pinpoint why I stayed in that terrible situationship. I do air quotes relationship. Why do you think you were on the opposite side stringing someone along?
It made me feel good to have someone who was really interested in me, and I didn't have to be vulnerable. I didn't have any stakes in it. And like, I hate admitting this. It does not make me sound like a good person. I feel really, really bad about it. It's 8 years later or whatever, 7 years later. But I think that, again, it was at a time where I didn't have the highest self-esteem, and it made me feel good, and it made me feel like worthy, and it made me feel like I was normal. And all these crushes I had were the guys, like Kimmy was front and center for several of these crushes. I had like 2 or 3 massive crushes on friends that were in a similar friend group like Kimmy, and like she knows them, and I would pine after them, and there was just no interest. So it was kind of, it was.
We don't know. We never know.
No, I mean, I think we can call it, but
I was always like, go for it.
Yeah, I know.
You know what they always say though is that fuckboys have really low self-esteem.
Yeah,
so I think like
100%
what you were saying, I don't think you are alone by any means in that. Like, I'm sure there's so many people that have strung someone along because they wanted that validation.
I have done it. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's the reverse too. Like, Kimmy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but the reason I stayed in a bad situation is because of self-esteem too. It was still better to have someone than no one. And like, there was like a little bit of crumbs that like you thought that you could like turn it around. And I think, at least from my situation too, it's like he started as the one super interested and then flipped the script on me. So I wanted to like regain the power. It was like all about like power and ego trip. Exactly.
Winning.
Totally. Having the power is, it's a big thing. And it was honestly, I think a big reason I did stay in that was because I had never in my entire life had the power in a relationship or any kind of romantic entanglement. Never. And in having it, I was like, well, this is never going to happen again. So I may as well, enjoy it, blah, blah, blah. The wrong thing to do. And also what I ultimately realized was like, oh, in a good relationship, it doesn't feel like someone has more power. It feels like you're in things together working it out. But I didn't know that.
But also, I'll just give Liza some credit. Like, I think actually always you brought up this situation when I would be kind of upset about my situations, and it really helped me realize it's not like good versus evil, villain. It's not. Liza was incredibly interested. You were really interested in him at the beginning. And you like had fun with him. It wasn't like, malicious. There are some malicious people out there, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like anyone I dated or who strung me along was like actually as evil as I made them out to be in my mind. It was all about my own battle with power and, accepting that I was maybe worthy of love someday. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it was what you said, Kimmy, earlier too, at least like how I viewed it. It was better to be with someone than no one, because you're fed that you should be in a relationship, and now you have something to talk to your friends about. Now you have like, drama that's like exciting and all this stuff. And in reality, you're actually like doing yourself a huge disservice staying with this person that has no interest in a relationship with you, because then you can't meet someone else. But in the moment, it feels like you're like fitting in more, I think.
Yes, fitting in. Like, just that I could have someone to talk about in the conversation and not be like, another year, Kimmy's not even, well, I feel like there was always someone I had like maybe gone on a date with, but there's a lot of shame even around like early in my New York years. I babysat these adorable girls who I'm so in touch with. They're like my little nieces. And they would always be like, where's your boyfriend? Where's your boyfriend? And now I look back and I'm like, well, the messaging is still there, problem, because they're definitely Gen Z. But they were really young at the time. It was very sweet. But I think, looking back, and fine, fucking easy for me to say because I am really happy in the relationship I'm in right now. And so it's really easy for me to say. But I am so, if I could tell myself anything, it's like, just give that up. If a great relationship comes along that you don't have to, you can work for, but not like fight for before it's even a relationship, then yeah, if something great comes up, be in it. Otherwise, enjoy, like if anyone, like especially in my 20s, like be single. Like, I don't know, that sounds antithetical to our podcast, but it's like, yeah, dating sucks. Have all the experiences, have the learnings, fall for someone, get your heart broken, vice versa. Maybe you have to break someone's heart by accident. I don't know. But like, don't worry about being in a relationship. Those also, it's 2020, a terrible year, but things are changing. Nobody fucking cares when you get married now. Well, that's some people's families have a lot of pressure on them, etc. But I don't know. I'm just like, why was I fed that my life would be like so much better with a partner. It is great. I love my partner. Oh, partner. I hate saying partner. My boyfriend. I love him. I'm so happy to have him. But like I really believe in like having a lot of alone time in your 20s, being single and independent. So that's my diatribe.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with like jumping from relationship to relationship or placing too much emphasis on being in a relationship is that you end up jumping into other people's lives. And you forget who you are, you don't have an identity, and you haven't defined your own life. So when you're alone again, it feels really amplified because all of a sudden you've lost your life basically because you defined your life by the partner you're with. And that's kind of like the dependency problem that we're facing too. Yep. But I guess we should talk about this next bad pattern that you were saying, which is very similar, is, you know, like staying fixated on fuckboys. We talked about this and like staying in these situationships. How do you move past this though?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, Liza. No.
Start a podcast.
I think for me, it was like literally making a podcast, forcing myself on dates, realizing like I had a say in the matter too, and then meeting someone who like the podcast wasn't even a deal breaker for. Not that it really in big ways was for anyone else. They found out early on. It was for one guy. I felt really badly. I wanted to like bail. And again, I had probably not talked about someone so not lovingly. He was very hot, and we talked about that for a long time at the top of the episode. So I objectified him, but he was like, "Thanks for the compliment. Just heard the podcast. I would just not be able to hear about you dating other people." So I felt badly, and you know, I think I'm not going to totally criticize what we did because we still do it, and I think there's a way. It's very anonymous. It's more about like our daters' experiences. But anyways, I think for me, breaking my habit had to do with going on more dates because that's not something I did. But we have a lot of listeners and people in our secret Facebook group who are like, I did 51 days and it didn't work. And I don't want it. It's like it came from my therapist for me. And we did like podcast about it. And it's, you know, really worked out for some people who wanted relationships. But I think it's about like breaking your bad habit specifically.
Right. Yes.
So yeah.
Well, you could go on 51 dates that are exactly the same. Then you're doing exactly the same thing. It's
or
about
not reflecting it all.
Right. It's about progressing through those 51 dates.
And I actually think about advice that your mom gave.
Oh,
and
which one was that?
I remember you saying that you have to think about like, this is going to be like, if you're having this much trouble now, like if you have to like force someone to hang out with you or to pick up the phone or text you, like what happens when the big shit comes down the road? Yeah. And I think that has stuck with me in general. I think your mom and other people have said this too. It's like just being realistic about like what a relationship is and not just getting so fixated on a person, but rather like what does this like ideal relationship look like more?
Yeah. I feel like I guess my advice would be like throw out your checklist. We've like shit on manifesting a lot. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but like, I think you have to like get with yourself and that's important. But then like, there are some really shallow things. This is not, okay. My boyfriend's from Florida and I was like, you're a Florida man. Like he's originally from Florida and I still tease him and it's awful. And I love lots of people from Florida, but you know, the state gets a bad rap. So that's
especially right now.
It's especially right now. I've now learned that there are very beautiful parts of Florida. Just wear your mask. Okay. No, I guess like but that's like a very embarrassing thing to admit, but like little things like that would not be a deal breaker for me, but like I would build up some weird story around who am I to say who I should be with or deserve. Like I've got all my own, like that's not a flaw. Again, I'm really digging myself in a hole here, but like even there are other little things like I think around interests, like if you feel like you have to be so on the same page about like, I feel like music, I'm not even that into music, but I'm more into music and I've liked bonding with that and going to concerts with people I've dated. My boyfriend, not that into music, but that can't be a deal breaker. Like he treats me like gold and I love him. Like I think the checklist for me was like that changed things. Like making a new checklist about like, how do I feel comfortable or do I feel anxious with this person? Do I feel like I can be myself or do I feel like I have to be put together, Kimmy? That is from Sex and the City. Carrie.
That's like, a good point because I think like when you fall for like the fuckboys or like the people that you want to be with that don't want to be with you, it's usually for superficial reasons, like they're hot or funny or like something like that. not how they make you feel. Obviously, they don't make you feel
Exactly.
good.
Or they fit your checklist. It's that guy that, you know, has the education you want, the background you want, the job that you've been looking for. And then for some reason we just get so like we get stuck on that and then we can't move past it. And we posed this as a question for our Facebook group. We do would you rathers a lot. And the would you rather was, would you rather date someone who is like the stock market or someone who's like a savings account? So a stock market is volatile, potential high gains, high maintenance, or savings account, which is potential low returns, but you know, it's low maintenance and then they're very stable. And the majority people chose, what do you think? Savings account. Savings account. But the majority people date the stock market because that's what's exciting. And I think that's what fuckboys provide. You put more investment into them, but then you see those high returns, they spike, but they also crash.
I think it also comes down to like where you are in dating though. Like I know when I was in this situation, my best friend was like, do you really want a relationship? Because all your actions are not pointing to that. Like you wouldn't be with this person. And I think sometimes you just have to go through it. Like I wish my situation was like 3 months, not almost 2 years. That is like my one regret, but I'm glad I went through it because I would never tolerate that anymore. It's just like if someone was like, I don't want to be in a relationship with you, I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to be in a relationship with you either. Like there's no way I would do that again, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if anyone's out there going through it right now, like I thought there was never going to be a light on the tunnel. I thought I'd never get over like 2 of these. And then you do. And you learn so much. So that is the silver lining.
Well, you learn you can't change someone. I think that's the biggest thing that has been learned is like I thought I would win him over and I would make him do something that he didn't want to do. And I'd win. The winning is really the detriment.
We have to remember that fuckboys are fuckboys because we let them be fuckboys. I can guarantee you that our boyfriends have been fuckboys at some point in their life to other women. And if we allow them to be fuckboys, they will be. So I think that that's also it's on us. We can't tolerate this behavior. And when you see it, you call it out and then you say no to it.
Well, that goes to the earlier one being like the cool girl. Like if you don't have any like expectations of someone, it's just like human nature to do the bare minimum to get what you want.
For sure. I like how, so I think this is a good way to get into takeaways because I liked how in one of the interviews that you two did, you talk about dating as if you're going to a random friend's birthday party. And I really love that mindset because it keeps you open and it keeps you stop thinking about focusing on like a romantic connection. It's more about these humans. And I also really appreciate the fact that you talked about these women, these men that you went on dates with as humans and not like date number 5 or bachelor number 6. They are humans. So that's one huge takeaway for anyone who's struggling right now with dating fatigue is that if you keep an open mindset and you keep being curious about the humans that you're meeting, you're guaranteed to have a really good time. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a romantic connection, but you're going to learn a lot. I also learned that we need to stop looking and start feeling. And I always say this, like, I hate saying looking for love because how do you know what you're really looking for? And what you were saying, Kimmy, too, is like with the checklist, how can you really put into words who is the perfect person for you?
You can't.
But we can feel things. So how does this date make me feel? How does he make me feel when he says this or does this? So we need to just keep feeling and stop looking. And the third takeaway I have is CGS, cool girl syndrome. You know, like restless leg syndrome, they'll be like, your symptoms are, you feel fatigued and you can't stop moving your legs. If you feel that you have symptoms of CGS coming on, you need to stop right there and give yourself a dose of your own medication and say, I need to stop with this. CGS will always hurt you. You'll always end up not being fulfilled because you don't voice your needs. You're actually deprioritizing your needs for your partner before they even do it. So if you're experiencing CGS, just catch your symptoms there and just fix it like right away.
I think my biggest takeaways is, sometimes it's hard because we don't talk about this stuff like out in the open. Like we talk about our shitty situations, but we don't talk about like why they're happening and the deeper reasons for like the psychology that makes us stay in bad situations, or it makes us not be afraid to ask for certain things. And I think there's something about hearing that it's not just you and that other people go through this and that it's normal in a way that like you can break out of it. Like this isn't something that you're set in forever, and also really seeing where it comes from. Like recognizing that it was a lot of the stuff that we were spoon-fed from an early age and kind of giving yourself a little grace on it that you can like move past that. And I think just also having like empathy for the other people, the other sexes, whoever else you're dating, that they're going through similar things too. It might not be identical to what you're doing, but this isn't just like you're not the only person that's feeling this way, I think is the best way to put it. And sometimes you just have to go through a bad experience to learn what you won't stand for. I think it becomes problematic when you're just repeating the same things over and over again. Like we talked about, if Kimmy, you went on 51 first dates and you never like reflected on them, then you might not have really shifted those patterns. But as long as you're like becoming aware and making changes, that's the best thing that you can be doing. And it's not like there's an end game of I must be in a relationship or I must be married. It's like, how do I feel confident with myself? And I, stand for behavior that makes me feel good. And I treat myself with love and respect and not take shit, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Don't take shit from anyone. Even me when I shit on Florida. Sorry, guys.
Any other pieces of advice for any of the daters out there or people in relationships who are having a hard time voicing their needs?
I mean, for the daters, I always like to just remind people that it should be kind of fun. And, you talked about this too, about the birthday party thing of like, go to it. Just everyone is interesting. Every single person has something interesting. And if you treat a date as an opportunity to get to like uncover the interesting thing about the person, even if you show up and they seem like the most boring person on earth, it's like there's something going on there. And to me, I mean, like I'm like I love talking and I love other humans. So I love trying to like pull someone's personality out and figure out what they're about. And I think that if you can approach it as a fun opportunity, it will be less scary. I'm not saying there will never be feelings and never be like bad moments, but it will be more exciting, I think.
I think you can like make dating fun, but you don't have to make it a crazy project, and you definitely don't have to do a podcast about it, but like have a friend to support you through it. Not hold you accountable if that's what you want, but like I'm so grateful. Without Liza, without the podcast, I would have easily lost steam, and also it's okay to lose steam and stop dating. We used to do a thing right after my first impression of the date. We'd call it a taxi cab confession, and I'd record a voice note on my way home from the date.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, and
yeah.
So actually our most recent dater, Olivia, her and her friends were listening to the podcast regularly and sending each other their own taxi cab confessions. And that's when like she sent us one and we were like, we just connected and we asked her if she wanted to come on eventually. And I would also just say, I was thinking more because drew a blank when you asked for advice. I think like baby steps, if it's about like speaking up for yourself more and remembering that you don't have to wait till you're treated like shit to speak up or like test out that muscle. You can do it like if you had a good first date. Like this was big. Liza was like, I feel like we both talked about this, but Liza really encouraged me to like ask dudes out on second dates if I felt like it went well. So did my therapist, I think. And even that tiny moment of just, I think this date went well. So I'm going to send a text just floating out like, hey, do you want to hang out again sometime? Like that was a one tiny way of speaking up for myself that I sadly had never done before. Even if I had a great first date, I was just waiting. So that's my thought.
I love that. It could even be something so simple, like I had a good time. Like you can take like really small baby steps with that. I think another final takeaway I had that Liza, you reminded me of, it's like, this doesn't stop with dating. Like this is yourself. Like this is something that's going to be like a muscle that you need to work in all types of relationships, whether that's romantic, friendships, family, like work. Like this is just being real and authentic. And I think it's not being afraid to say things, but learning how to say things in a way that brings you closer to people and not just make you resentful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can even take a step back from dating and just go to a restaurant. If you get food that's a little salty, ask for them to take it back. How many times have you gone to a restaurant, didn't get the meal that you wanted and still pay for it and didn't say anything? I think it is our right to start defining what we like and our preferences and to ask for that. Ask for exactly that. That's how I've been practicing, at least in my own personal life. I'm just being really annoying with
I was going to say I've never had that issue with restaurants.
What? You've never had you've never had a meal where you're like, I didn't like this. I wasn't
but
satisfied?
I mean, I would send it back. I've never had an issue like biting my tongue with it. But yet with dating, for whatever reason, I like always bit my tongue. So I think it could be even the most like outspoken people can still have trouble when it comes to romantic relationships with this.
Totally.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Liza and Kimmy, for coming on our show. Thanks for having us on your show. It's so much fun sharing these learnings and talking about the big J.
The journey.
The journey.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us. It's been so fun to talk to you.
And for anybody who wants to catch up on all these episodes that they reference, you can find 51 First Dates on anywhere that you can consume podcasts, basically.
If you liked Kimmy and Liza and you want to also help us get more guests like Kimmy and Liza, remember to leave us a rating and review. Only takes 2 seconds to leave that rating, and it goes such a long way.
For both of our podcasts, please. Just do it all in one. Yeah.
Smash that like.
In one sitting.
It's such a weird system, but
it really helps. Thanks again. And we're going to wrap this up. Stay dateable. Ooh, harmonizing at its best.
The Dateable Podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.
Want to continue the conversation? First, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter with the handle @DateablePodcast. Tag us in any post with the hashtag StayDateable, and trust us, we look at all of those posts. Then head over to our website, dateablepodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes as well as articles, videos, and our coaching service with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series, where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. We're also downloadable for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, Stitcher Radio, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.